Simon T. Bailey. Now, as many of you may already know, Simon is globally recognized. He is a leadership expert, a best-selling author. You all have his books on your seat. He is a former director at Disney Institute, where he helped leaders build culture rooted in authenticity, in purpose, and in excellence. Through his work, including Resilience at Work, which we will focus on today, Simon challenges all of us to rethink how we lead through pressure, change, and yes, uncertainty, and how resilience can truly become our genuine superpower. So without further ado, everybody please rise and give a very, very warm Next Up Atlanta welcome to Simon T. Bailey. Let it rise, let it soar, like a butterfly's wings. We are meant for more. Hear the pain, heal the heart, let
Thank you. You can be seated. Thank you. Good morning. Do me a favor, look at the person you're sitting next to, look him in the eye real quick, and tell him, since the last time I've seen you, you look marvelous. Simply marvelous. Somebody said, I look marvelous and I feel marvelous. Well, whenever I come back to Atlanta, I'm reminded 37 years ago, my mom and dad loaded the family station wagon and dropped me off at Morehouse College. At the end of my freshman year at Morehouse, they called and said, we don't have the money to send you back to Morehouse, nor do we have money to bring you back to Buffalo, but we do love you. And that's a whole nother story by itself. I was on the 10-year plan in finishing my degree, but I live in Orlando, Florida, and I have the honor and the pleasure of being the father to an amazing son, Daniel, 27, and a beautiful, brilliant daughter, Madison, 23. And they are just everything to me, and I'm so happy that I get a chance to be their father. All right, so to ground us, because we have a lot of territory to cover, would you be so kind to sit up straight, feet flat on the ground? And in a moment, I want to invite you to take a deep breath. We're going to inhale, exhale. We're going to do it 3 times, all right? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Last time. 1, 2, 3. That first micro practice that you've just experienced is called centering. And centering in the midst of what I would call permanent uncertainty, taking a moment to take a deep breath. Please remember, it's all in the breath. You're slowing down to the speed of the moment to ensure that there is an alignment of head, everybody say head, heart, hands. When I have that alignment in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of transition and transformation, I have to be mindful of how am I doing from the inside out? Am I grounded? So all of you had an opportunity to take the assessment. And I want to just give you some backstory regarding the assessment. And if you're taking notes, this is a good note I want you to capture. Resilience is voice activated. Resilience is voice activated. When you find your voice, you find your spark. When you find your spark, you find your joy. When you find your joy, you find your freedom. So freedom at any time is available to you no matter where you are in your leadership journey, no matter where you are in your career, if you understand what am I saying about where I am right now. So the whole 12 Shapes backstory, I was in Park City, Utah at an event for entrepreneurs and leaders, and Kim Giles was one of the presenters, who is the founder of 12 Shapes. And 25 years of her work has been around helping people understand it's not just your personality, but it's your behavior and how you show up when things go south. And when she said it, I was just like, shut the front door. Like, it's just unbelievable, because what she began to unpack for me and everyone that was a part of this discussion She's had 5 million people go through 12 shapes, and she said there are 2 ways you show up when you do the deeper dive. In the midst of transformation, you show up either in fear or clarity. If you show up in clarity, it's because you understand your values and your values ground you. If you show up in fear, fear becomes the default. And what she began to unpack, that I was just like, oh my goodness. She said, individuals have either fear of loss or fear of failure. Fear of failure is I'm not good enough. Fear of loss is I am not safe. And no matter what is happening real time in a person's professional journey, they will default to one or the other. But how they really value who they are is how they show up. So there are 3 value systems that are really impacted by the 12 shapes. Number 1, intrinsic. Number 2, extrinsic, where you value task, things. And then number 3, concepts or systems, okay? And when I first took the assessment, I came out as a rectangle, and I'll explain that in a moment. I took it again, and I came out as an octagon. So one of the questions that will automatically come up, Simon, if I took the assessment again, would my shape change? And it depends on environment, depends on what's going on, it depends on how you answer the questions. Now, I know many of you have taken these types of assessments before, and you might say, okay, Simon, because I'm an assessment expert, I know how to game the system. So if your shape came out that you're like, you know what, I think I'm something else, it's okay, you certainly can take the assessment again, it's free. So let me dive into a little bit more about the shapes. So where are all of my heart people? All of my heart people, just heart people, raise your hands. Okay, a few hearts in the audience. So what's interesting about the heart shape is very empathetic, all about the people. How do I make sure that people are okay in the midst of change, all right? And sometimes that heart, that they will lean towards that area. And here's the thing I want you to understand about the shapes. You are not broken. You don't need to be fixed. It's just how you're wired. And when we understand everybody is wired differently, how do we communicate and connect with individuals in the way they need to receive it in order to honor your value and your fear, okay? So everybody's wired differently. How do we just accept that? A circle, and I'll go across and I'll do it that way. So a circle, where are all my circles in the room? All my circles in the room? All right, so the circle behavioral personality shows up in an environment. Let's get it done, but let's have fun. Circles don't want to work by themselves. So to say, oh my goodness, you got to work remote, circles are like, are you kidding me? Like, I got to be around people because it's where they get their juice. It's where they literally come alive. So that circle shape is that shape that says, hey, I want to make sure that I'm learning from others. I'm gathering different things to help make me better. Ovals follow, where are the ovals? Where are the ovals? All right, ovals follow the letter of the law. They will not deviate. Let's try this. No, 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 no. Ovals are straight down the middle. We're going to do this because that's the right thing to do. They're just wired. So if you ever approach an oval, don't say, you know what, we're just going to color outside the line. Ovals are like, what? No, this is the way it's got to be. And it's not that it's just how they're wired. So we have to understand that. All right, let's go to stars. Any stars in the room? Okay, so stars, if you ever meet a star is very expressive. They love to make sure everything is color coordinated, everything is flowing together. Stars show up and they're almost this person who can recognize beauty wherever because it starts with them. So in how they're wired and in how you approach them is really saying, wow, you look really nice today. for a star that's like huge because they put thought into their appearance. It's just how they're wired, all right? Where are the arrows in the room? Okay, so what's interesting about arrows are the individuals that say, here's my list of 20 things I need to get done. I'm going to get these things done, and I don't need you to take me off task. Arrows are not into a lot of chit-chat, small talk, kumbaya, hold hands. Arrows are like, are you done yet? Like, really? Because I got to get back to my list. And it doesn't make them a bad person. Arrows, how am I doing so far? Is that spot on, arrows? Give or take, all right? But arrows are about the business of business. It's just how they're wired. Rectangles, where are my rectangles in the room? Okay, rectangles are the researchers. They want to know, show me the data. Where did this come from? They love to learn new things. How many of you rectangles, you could have 2 to 3 books going on at the same time? Yes? And so whenever you come into a meeting, rectangles, you want to understand, okay, this is nice, very sweet, very special. This is based on what? Prove it to me. I don't believe you. Tell me more. Harvard says that whenever you're in a room like this, there are 4 styles of learners. The first style of learner is, why should I listen to you? Second style of learners, where's the data? Third style of learners, give me 3 things I could take away right now. Fourth style of learners, I'm overwhelmed with a terabyte of information. Just give me one thing to take away. 4 different styles of learners. But that rectangle, how you approach a rectangle and do business with a rectangle is bring them the facts, show them the studies, and then they buy into whatever you're saying, okay? Then you have crosses. Where are my crosses in the room? Okay, my crosses are the individuals that will fall on the sword. We've got to do right by people. This is the way it's got to be. Because crosses, deeply within them, that particular shape is, how do I ensure that humanity is getting a fair shake? And if somebody is not being dealt with appropriately, the cross is going to raise their hand and say, Rut-row, time out. Let's tap the brakes. Let's revisit this. That's the cross. It's not, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. They're just different. Where are my rhombuses? Where's my rhombuses? All right, 1 rhombus. Okay. I'm totally messing with you. So one of the things, when I was getting certified as a coach with 12 Shapes, I said, Kim, in 25 years, does the rhombus, what does it skew towards? And she said, generally, it skews towards more masculine energy than female energy. But she said there are rhombuses that are female. And so what's interesting about the rhombus is generally a CEO type of shape, achievement-oriented, focus on success. Another interesting parallel when I was talking with Kim, because we kind of moved out of the workplace, she said a rhombus generally does well in a relationship with a diamond. And I'll get to that in a moment. And so she began to explain to me, she had a couple that she was coaching. And for whatever reason, the rhombus saw things a certain way, but they were married to an oval. And what caused the challenge in the relationship is the oval came from a very heart-centered place, but the rhombus is like, why can't you just figure it out? Like, da-da-da-da-da, right? And she said what she had to help the rhombus understand is the value of an oval, and the oval understanding how the rhombus was wired. So the rhombus is a very bottom line, let's make it happen, how do we do this? And that rhombus, one of the greatest gifts of a rhombus is to understand who are the people that are close to them, that are giving them feedback that can help them be better. And how do they value that person, okay? And then where are all of the triangles? Any triangles in the room? All right. So triangles are all about, I'm inventing this project, and I need my alone time to work on what's really important to me because it makes you come alive. And that triangle, if you will give them a challenge, they will go and start to figure out, oh, it could be this, it could be that. And if you just leave them alone, they're okay. Because a triangle doesn't need to be around a lot of people. They just enjoy being by themselves, all right? Where are all of my squares? Any squares? All right, so the square shape is not just about survival, but it's also understanding that they like systems, they like things in a certain manner, but they also come alive when they're in that environment that celebrates their wiring instead of tolerates their wiring. Meaning, how am I received, how am I heard, how am I seen in the organization, all right? Where are all my diamonds? Where are all the diamonds, all right? So the diamond shape, one of my favorite, these are your folks who are very OCD, all right? Diamonds like things in a certain order. Diamonds, how am I doing so far? Diamonds like structure. They like systems. They're like 2 comes after 1, 3 comes after 2. It's very bada bang, bada boom. It's how they're wired. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It's just how they're wired. So you're probably saying, okay, Simon, where's all of this going? Each of the shapes have a fear of failure or a fear of loss. And when you got the report would have highlighted that fear of failure or that fear of loss. Why do I bring this up? Because when we talk about resilience, sometimes when things happen out of our control, our behavior defaults to one of the other. But the invitation today, if resilience is voice activated, how do I catch myself when I am operating in fear of failure, fear of loss, and balance and say, how do I recognize that I have value and everyone else that I interact with has value as well? So today, we are really going to look at how do we shift that mindset. And here's the core principle. Everybody has the same intrinsic value. Now, let me give you just a little bit of the backstory, because when I started working with Kim, I wanted to understand where did this whole 12 shapes come from. Dr. Robert Hartman, back in the 1930s, lived in Nazi Germany. He has a couple PhDs, mathematician, Nobel Prize winner, and he created what is called the science of axiology. And the science of axiology is really understanding human value. This was his work back in the 1930s. So one of the most important things that we should realize right now, everyone has value. And when we embrace that value, it causes that person to really come alive. All right, so if you look at bad behavior is fear-driven, the person feels unsafe. So here's what's going on with the circle, okay? Here's what's going on with the heart. And this is what they need. So that circle that has that fear of failure, okay, which might be saying, I am not enough, they need validation, praise, and reassurance. Fear of loss, listening, order, control, reassurance. So if you say, Simon, I am leading right now circles who are that particular shape, know that they want that reassurance that everything is going to be okay. You still matter. I'm going to be clear in my communication. I'm going to tell you as much as I know based on what is shared with me, but I want to let you know that you are valuable. I see you. I know you. You are important. Okay? So that is critical because when you look at the different values, the pros and cons, everyone shows up in an environment with whatever is going on. And today, I just want to let you know, wherever you are in your journey, you're built for this moment. The reason you weren't born in the 18th century is because you weren't needed. You exist now in this century because of who you are, what you carry, and everything that has brought you to this point. So for those of you who are working, those of you in transition, those of you who are waiting for the other shoe to drop, I just want to remind you that resilience is your superpower. Because here's the visual I want to paint on the canvas of your mind. In business, it's like surfing in the ocean. You get knocked off your surfboard because of change, rifts, transformation. It's your resilience that gets you back on the surfboard, and it's your brilliance that allows you to catch the next wave. So wherever you are right now in your journey, it's that resilience. In some of our research, we asked 1,000 working Americans, how do they define resilience? And working Americans told us that resilience is problem solving, perseverance, and grit. Now we know grit is a part of Angela Duckworth's work, but when we look at problem solving, there are some things that you just know how to do better than anyone else. That is your resilience. Something that I would encourage you to do, and in fact, we'll do it right now. If you have a sheet of paper, or if you have your phone with you, can you take out your phone, or I think there's a notebook, there's a journal in front of you. I want everybody to do something with me. Go to a blank sheet of paper, and I prefer for you to write it out. You can just write it out. And here's what I want you to write down. Please write down, what is right about me? What is right about me? And I'm going to give us 30 seconds. And when I say go, I want you to write down everything that's right about you. Think it, ink it, all right? Everybody ready? Go. What's right about you? Write down as many as you can. 30 seconds. Ten seconds. Time. Okay, do me a favor. Turn to the person that you're sitting next to. Oh, brilliant one. You do know that you're sitting next to a brilliant one, right? Just say hello, oh, brilliant one. Come on, hello. Somebody said, I'm glad you finally recognized. Okay, real quick. Share with oh, brilliant one what you captured, what you wrote down, what's right about you. Share that with them real quick. Okay. Okay, let's come back together. Okay, real quick. Who wants to share with me something that you wrote down as it relates to what's right about you? Anybody want to share? This is the interactive part. Don't shout me down. All right, right here. Your name? Leanna. All right, everybody say hi, Leanna. Hi. All right, see, Leanna, what's right about you? You're kind. Love it. What else?
Oh, the whole list.
Yeah.
Thoughtful.
Loving.
Thorough.
Intelligent.
Empathetic.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right, let me introduce you to our next up celebratory clap on three. Clap once. 1, 2, 3. Booyah. Awesome. Who else? Somebody else over here. All right, right here. Sunny with an I. Everybody say hi, Sunny with an I. Faith. Determination. Positivity. Heart. Desire. And growth. Awesome. On three. 1, 2, 3. So one of the things I want you to take away, practical takeaway, whenever you have days and you have moments when you're doubting yourself, I want to invite you to come back to what's right about you. Because what you wrote down is the energy that infuses you in the midst of permanent uncertainty, that you anchor yourselves in the values of this is what's right about me. And part of the reason why I wanted you to share with Oh Brilliant One is the moment you share with someone else, hope begins to rise in them as it rises in you to say, oh my goodness, they're awesome, I'm awesome, and we're going to be okay. Yes? So something you can do, even with friends, families, bring them back to team members, what is right, because so much of our energy goes into what's wrong. And it's very easy, and all of a sudden you find yourself going down that vortex, something has happened, and you build up a story around what's happened, and the story becomes more powerful than what's happened. So writing down what's right about you is to come back to, I get to create the new narrative, all right? Now, something I forgot to do, I apologize, human moment. Where are all my octagons in the room? Octagons are like, you forgot about me! Oh my goodness! This is where you insert, bless his heart, right there. It's right there, it's right there. So what's interesting about the octagon shape is the octagon shape is very intuitive. The octagon shape can read the tea leaves of what's happening real time, and the octagon shape many times is a great salesperson because they can walk into a room, never meet a stranger, instantly and connect. The octagon shape also has what I call that discernment, the ability to just say, okay, what's going on real time? And they can begin to tap into, okay, how do I show up using that skill, that gifting, that ability that I have? All right? Octagons, did I do you right? We're good? Okay, did I miss any other shapes? Okay. Okay, so I want to build on this, and part of the reason why I wanted to take you through that exercise, because our time today is really about this belief that you see here. This belief. Every single one of you in this room, no matter where you sit, first big takeaway, you are the architect of future readiness. And when I say the architect of future readiness, no matter what is going on in the organization, in the business, you have ability to say, I am going to practice AI. Say this to me. Say, Simon says, I'm going to practice AI, actual intelligence. When you have actual intelligence as it relates to future readiness, you're not looking at where the organization is right now. You're saying, where is it going to be? And how do I start to ask a series of questions that keeps me relevant and on the cutting edge of what is emerging, not what's happened in the past? The architect of future readiness looks through the windshield of where things are going. How do you do that? I would encourage all of you, if you're not thinking of it today, everybody needs to have a BFF in the organization who's working in strategy and finance. Know them, ask them questions, take them to lunch, find out, what are you seeing? What are the numbers saying? If you are in a cost center, not a profit center, how do you begin to come up with a list of questions to say, how do I become more financially intelligent as it relates to the business? If you have a person in operations or strategy, those individuals who sit in the meetings that kind of decipher where things are going, and you're probably saying, Simon, why? Right now, corporations are paying millions of dollars to McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, for them to come in and to say, here's where the future is, here's how you've got to shift the organization, and there's somebody that you know that's in those meetings or putting decks together to reorient the organization. And the reason you want to have a confidential conversation with them off record. So you can figure out, how do I help not just myself, but my team? There's need to know, nice to know. So how do we start to ask a different set of questions, so truly becoming that future architect? Now, here's why. So September 21st, 1996, joined the happiest place in the world, that being the Walt Disney World Resort. And I was only going to stay at Disney for maybe 90 days, because I was just overwhelmed. I left an organization of 100 people. Now I'm at an organization where there are 50, at that time, 55,000 people working within 47 square miles, and they're all singing, "It's a Small World After All." And I was just overwhelmed, couldn't get anything done. And day 80, I get a call from Janice Petrie, who had recruited me to Disney. It took me 2 years to get recruited at Disney, 10 interviews and a 10-page psychological analysis from Gallup. And I still have that psychological analysis to this day. I'm not saying I hold on to things. I'm not saying I got PTSD. But I just was trying to figure, why did it take 2 years? So Janice calls me. She said, "How's it going?" I said, "Janice, when I hit the 90-day mark, I am out of here. I'm gone." And she says, "Simon, everything you need to succeed is not written in the employee handbook. Everything comes down to understanding how Disney functions." And what would have only been 90 days turned into 7 years, because I began to understand the power of asking a question and really thinking about, how am I showing up right now in the environment? I'm going to share with you a video from a friend of mine. Her name is Daphne E. Jones. She's written a book called Win, W-I-N, Win When They Say You Won't, all right? And one of the things that I learned from her is, how do you truly command with clarity? One of the most important things you can have right now is just clarity about where you are. Where there's not clarity, is there fear? And the most important thing to consider is, where am I deploying my energy management? Am I deploying my energy and I am clear in my communications, how I show up? I command with clarity. Let me say this before I share the video. From today forward, any room you go into, you're not in the room is in you. And when the room is in you, you show up to command clarity, because you know who you are. And you don't even have to force yourself into the room. Your very presence allows people to hear your voice. And I'm going to say it again, repetition for reinforcement. Resilience is voice activated. So that when you speak with the authority and the clarity of, I know who I am, I know my value, I understand my fear, and I have chosen to come into this room and own it, because you know who you are. So I want you to listen to something that Daphne shared with me. Daphne is former Chief Information Officer for GE Healthcare, former Senior Vice President at Johnson & Johnson, sits on 3 Fortune 500 boards, and just an amazing person. So I want you to hear what she shares.
I learned about the power of PIE, P-I-E, by Harvey Coleman. I write about that in the book as well. And PIE is your performance, your image, and your exposure, P-I-E. My mom always talked about, Daphne, you just do your job right, and they will promote you. They will notice you. You're going to be just fine. No, that's not true, because you wonder why this person who was behind you in terms of years or experience is now in front of you as your boss. That's because they understood the I and the E. The performance, you're already doing your job. You're doing it well. You're doing it early. You're spending less money than you thought you would, or whatever. But it's the I, is your image. And your image is how you look, it's how you dress, how clean you are, and whatever, but it's also your brand. When Daphne's coming into a meeting, do they say, oh my God, here she comes again, we're gonna get nothing done? That's your image. Or when they know she's coming into a meeting, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do good today. We're going to probably get done in half an hour because, she's going to add so much value. Or is she collaborative? Is she stingy? Is she complain a lot? Is she always late? Whatever. That's your image. And your E is exposure. Who do you know and who knows you? Who will speak for you when you're not on Zoom and not in the room? Oh, you got to see my friend Daphne. She is amazing. She speaks Spanish. She's lived in Brazil for 5 years, and she has the ability to start up a company and scale it 3x, 3x. And so that is somebody who, if they don't know you though, if they're not exposed to you, they won't know you can do that. And so part of our job, part of my job was to perform well, was to follow the leaders who were doing their thing and seem to be getting promoted well. And then it was also to make sure that people knew who I was, not to overexpose myself. One day I did I was on my way home from Johnson & Johnson. And I saw my picture on a billboard on the freeway in New Jersey. I'm like, because, everybody else sees that image and they want to know, are you getting your work done? Are you posing for a Vogue magazine or something while your picture's on a billboard? But it was because I was the face of diversity at that moment in terms of my leadership. But that was an overexposure thing because everybody's driving to J&J the same way kind of a thing, and they see it. So you don't want to be overexposed, but you don't want to be underexposed. And so,
all right, so what'd you hear? What'd you hear? PI. PI stands for? All right, let's just drop a pin. How does that resonate with you? Which one of the PI, the P, the I, the E resonates with you the most when you think about where you are in your journey? Which one? Okay, so if exposure, all right, let's just talk about exposure. What does exposure look like for you moving forward? If you say, you know what, Simon, I need to get more exposure, what does that look like for you? Come on. Huh? 101s, coffee, what else? Asking, somebody say collaborating with teams. Okay, so part of the reason why I'm asking you the question, Socratic method of learning, all the brilliance we need is in the room. So if you say, Simon, for me, resilience looks like I need more exposure, I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do? What's the go-do? I was doing a session from Microsoft years ago, and the executive at Microsoft said, Simon, we're all about the go-do. So if we stop the presentation today and you walked out of the door, what would be that one micro step that you could take that would, for you, be that takeaway? All right? Now, let me share with you why I teed up that question. One of the things that I've learned in my journey, over 37 years, 6 different companies, 10 different jobs, is everything comes down to relationships. If there is something I want you to write down, please write down, relationships are the currency of the future. Everything in business comes down to how do I'm going to pick on you, Christian, for a second. Christian, raise your hand. This is Christian, the octagon. So, Christian, when I talk about relationship, is how do I relate to the cargo in your ship? Wherever you are going in your professional journey, how often do I engage with you to learn from your brilliant mind? Oh my goodness, I just had coffee with Christian. Here's what I learned today. Here's what I took away today. I just met Dawn this morning. Dawn, right? Dawn has written a book, Heart-Based Leadership? Heartbeat Leadership. Get Dawn's book, Heartbeat Leadership. And I asked Dawn, tell me more about heartbeat leadership. All of a sudden, because of the relate to the cargo in your ship, I want to become a better leader because of Dawn. So I want you to think about what are the 3 to 5 relationships that you have right now that you need to cultivate or work on. Take out your pen. Please write down 1 to 5. I want you to write it down. If you think it, ink it. What are the top 5 relationships you need to develop, you need to grow? This ties back to PI, that you need to build some equity in. 5 relationships. Harvey McKay wrote a book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. Great title, right? So I want you to dig your well before you're thirsty. What are the 5 relationships? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? Just write it down. All right, now, while you're writing that down, I want to share a little story with you. A few months ago, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, speaking at an event, and the host said, you have to meet June Wed. This is June in this photo. And June shared with me a story that absolutely blew me away. Dawn, she said to me, the company had a person on the team that they were going to get rid of. And she raised her hand and she said, don't get rid of her, put her on my team. So they put the woman on her team, and I said, June, what did you do? She said, I started writing her handwritten notes once a week, highlighting something that she did that was positive. She said, I didn't think anything of it. At the end of this year, at the end of the year, the woman had turned her performance around, went from a below expectations to a meet expectations to exceed expectations. And she said, I could literally promote her. And she said, prior to her joining my team, I knew that she had some things going on personally outside of work, but it kind of impacted how she showed up. So she said, I just decided to encourage her. She said, one day I had to go by her house to pick up something, and her teenage daughter answered the door. And her teenage daughter said, my mom will be right down. She said, will you come with me? So she goes into the house, and she walks her into where the washer and dryer is before you go out into the garage. And there's a cork board above the washer and dryer with all the handwritten notes that she had written to her over the last year. And the teenage daughter said, thank you so much for impacting my mom. I think what June discovered is no matter where people are in their journey, how do we hug them with our words? How do we encourage them? Dr. Maria Miskew at University of Michigan, clinical psychiatrist, says in her research, human beings need 3 things right now: to be seen, to be valued, and to be understood. So who can we build emotional equity into? Let me give you some practical things to think about. Everybody on LinkedIn? Yes. All right. What would it be like to identify one person on LinkedIn and endorse them? Yes. Number 2, what would it be like to write a recommendation for them? Write a recommendation for them. You're probably saying, why? It's all about me. No. Sometimes you have to give away what you want. You have to give away what you need. Write a LinkedIn recommendation for at least one person. Let's take it a step further. How many of you right now are working on a project team in your place of business, or you're working on something where you're collaborating with a lot of different people? What would it be like to find one person on the team that you really connected with and tell their boss about how amazing they are and why you enjoyed working with them? If we're going to build relationship equity, we have to. How many of y'all believe in the law of karma? What goes around comes around. Sometimes we got to give it away before we receive it. Yes? Okay. So one of the books that I've written is called Shift Your Brilliance, and I introduced this concept called vujade. Vujade is the opposite of? Okay. So deja vu, been there, done that. Vujade, going there, doing that. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. Anybody ever heard of a company called dunnhumby? Dunnhumby at all? Okay. So I was doing some work for dunnhumby a few years ago, pre-pandemic, and they shared something with me that I was like, what? That's crazy. Once a quarter on a Friday, they introduced something called iFriday, which is Innovation Friday. So everybody in the company on a Friday would go and work in another area of the company for the day, and then on Monday morning, they would go back to their regular roles. Now, you're probably saying, Simon, where's the vujade? If you show up on a Friday to work in an area that's not the core area in your job description, you have a ton of questions. Why do they do it this way? Why does this happen this way? You've got all these questions. But the second benefit is you go back on Monday morning to your regular role and you're like, wait a minute. On Friday, I did this. What if we try this in your job? And that tweak, seeing differently, is the Vuja Day. Selena Rezvani is a dear friend and someone who I just admire. She's absolutely brilliant. She's written several books, but her latest book is called Quick Leadership. She also has written a book called Quick Confidence. In our interview, Selena, in this spirit of Vuja Day, Seeing Differently, and I want you to hear her wisdom just as we think about how do we approach what we do through a fresh lens.
Let's jump right in. First of all, inquiring minds want to know, what is a cultural disruptor? Because that's what you are. You're a cultural disruptor. Tell us.
Yes. So here's how I think about it. A culture disruptor to me is first and foremost what I call a PQA, okay? A perpetual question asker. You know, someone who's not afraid to say, Simon, why do we do it this way? Or why does our process exclude this group, you know, and include this group, right? It's the opposite of do it this way because we've always done it this way. So that's a big piece of culture disruption, right? Asking the questions, challenging norms as standard practice. But it's also things like gathering feedback, you know, quickly incorporating it. For me, that means with employees, gathering that input so their voice is never far away, and trying experiments. You know, disruption isn't always this grand, large scale innovation. Sometimes it's little moves and moments. It's little changes that can nudge, you know, a culture disruption along.
Wow.
So what'd you hear? What'd you hear? Take risk, ask questions, perpetual question asker. Part of the reason why I wanted to share that with you, because what I've discovered in permanent uncertainty, that most individuals like to keep their head down, stay out of the fray. I'm not going to take any risk. I'm not going to try to raise my hand to say we should do this, we should do that, because of fear and being afraid. And resilience says, what are those little small moves, things that you see that if you just made a tweak, it would help the organization, it would help the department, it would help the division. And I want to invite you to think about, you're built for this moment. You see it, you know it, what can you do? So part of the reason why I built up is to bring you to this is I want you to thrive. Every single one of you in this room, how do we begin to thrive? You're saying, okay, Simon, what does that look like? And so I'm just going to give you some practical things to think about very quickly. How do you build cross-functional relationships? We already talked about that. How do you now demonstrate decision-making with big picture perspective? I had the honor, Dr. Chris Sopa invited me to be a part of a project a few years ago. We were working with a company, they had 4 executive coaches, and we were going to take 24 of their top performers through 1 year of coaching. And I had the honor of working with 6 amazing leaders during this time. And one of the leaders I was working with, I said to her, I said, okay, so what's the big picture thinking? And after we talked to her a few months, she said, you know what? There's an opportunity for us to expand into Sweden, and I'm working with a number of different departments. I'm going to make sure that that is successful. I'm going to go for it. And she went for it, turned out to be a career changer for her in a good way, all because she decided to play big, all right? Next, exposure through insightful leadership. What would it be like during this time for you to capture what is the essence of our leadership? What are those things that have really made us successful over time? Perhaps you interview leaders throughout the organization. You just say, hey, What were you doing when such and such happened? And perhaps you capture that, write it down, put it in a blog, talk to the communications department to say, hey, I'd love to learn some leadership, share some leadership lessons that I've learned from best in class in our organization. It shows insightful leadership. If you are reading articles from any of the leaders in your company, and you comment on that article about what it meant to you, how you took information away and applied it to your career, that is showing insightful leadership. What would it be like whenever you're in a meeting, because sometimes even if there's a town hall and you're with a senior leader, nobody wants to raise their hand, oh my goodness, I'm not gonna stick out. No, raise your hand, go there, exposure. Now, here's the thing, let me add balance to that. Some of you might be saying, Simon, I'm an introvert, I'm not an extrovert like you. So I want you to do what's most comfortable for you, but I just want you to even have the thought, even if you don't raise your hand publicly, could you get them on the side and ask a question? Hey, here's what I learned, here's what I've taken away. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, all right? Next, I need your brilliance. 20 years of my work, for any of you who've seen me over 20 years, has been around brilliance. It's what I've written about, it's what I talk about. And we asked working Americans, how do you define brilliance? If we gave them 17 qualities, working Americans told us that brilliance is confidence, competency, and creativity, okay? So when I'm in an environment that unlocks my brilliance impacts everyone else. It increases my confidence in who I am. I begin to have that self-efficacy that says, I can get through this time because my brilliance is understood, and I can be my most brilliant self. So practically, some things that you can think about is pitch innovative ideas. What are those things that you see? Things that can improve, things that would be, interesting. Pitch that innovative idea. Because, see, that's what shows up in times of change. That resilient voice that says, what can we do instead of what we can't do? Do you know that according to research, by the time a child is 17 years of age, they've heard no 150,000 times and only yes 5,000 times? So how do we find a yes in a no world? Your name is? Maggie. How do you do it with your toddler?
So what I started trying to do is instead of saying, no, you can't do that,
Right.
say yes if, or like give whatever the like boundary or clarification is. So yes, you can jump, but not on the bed.
Yes.
You can jump. Or yes, you can have that snack after you wash your hands.
Yes.
Whatever it is. And it like kind of rewires their brain to like want to do what I'm saying.
Maggie, that's it. That's brilliant. I love that. You know, Maggie, the other thing that you are doing, so there's a book called 30 Million Words. And it's written by Dr. Susskind. She's a medical doctor, University of Chicago. And what she discovered in her research is that children from 0 to 4 from white-collar families hear 45 million words. Children from 0 to 4 in blue-collar families only hear 13 million words. And that difference of 32 million words determines how they grow up, how their brains are shaped, their reading level, where they go to school, who they marry, who they become, all because of the power of words. So Maggie, how you have reframed a yes, but adding that balance so impacts the brain of your child. So I encourage you to get the book 30 Million Words, because words are everything. And notice what I said at the very beginning. Resilience is? Resilience is? Voice activated. So the most important thing you have to be mindful of, what is my talk track right now? Because words carry energy. Words create worlds. For those of you in transition right now, thinking about the next opportunity, what are the words that are coming out of your mouth? Because those words ultimately impact how you feel and what you attract. I was just in LA, so let me go West Coast on you for a moment. So whenever you step into a person's quantum field, you pick up on their vibration. And then you start to hear them talk. And you start to make some assumptions about how that person sees themselves right now. Now, I am not saying all of a sudden you got to become this positive psychologist person and never say negative things. No, let me add balance to this. Leaders, for those of you who are leaders of people in the room, the most important thing you can do is not to suppress the stress in environments, but to make available opportunities to talk about how people feel and what's going on real time. Yes? But we're not going to stay there. We're going to get it out. We're going to mention it. We're going to understand it. And then we're going to find a way forward. Yes? So this ability, resilience and voice activated, we understand the fear, being afraid, but we want to move towards value. And how do we continue to think about what we can do instead of what we can't do? Okay? All right, finally, lead high impact projects. I could spend an hour here, I won't, but I want to invite us to think about what are those projects that we can raise our hand and say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. Or ask your leader to say, hey, can you put me on that team for who you will become in this process? Resilience is not about shrinking, it's about expanding. And when I choose to expand, I'm simply saying, how do I add value? Not because I have to, but because I want to. All right? Now, I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to take us into an interactive exercise, but I want to set it up real quick. So, when I wrote the book, Resilience at Work, I noticed that there are 4 personality archetypes that show up in business called hurry, worry, ready, and steady. In the midst of permanent uncertainty, the hurry personality is always in a hurry. I got to get it done. I got to make it happen. They're rush, 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 rush. And the hurry personality doesn't necessarily get enough sleep at night because they'll wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and they'll start to go through the mental punch list of all the things that they need to do, but also something may have been said the day before, the week before, and they're still kind of processing that. What exactly did they mean by that? And they're like, oh my goodness, I got to be in a hurry. I got to get things done. In our research, we discovered 56% of working Americans are living life in a hurry. Never enough hours in the day. Can y'all believe we're already at March? Like, it's like, boom. It was just like we were celebrating the holidays, and all of a sudden, we are 56 days in to a new year. Does it feel like the world is kind of speeding up? Yes. So, which then forces us to be in a hurry, all right? But then there's the worry personality. Our research says that 48% of working Americans are worried about the future. So there are individuals that work with you right now that are gravely concerned about, will I have a job tomorrow? They may not articulate it, but they're feeling it. They're worried. Research says that when the brain is worried, the brain actually slows down. And when the brain slows down, it doesn't create neurogenesis, which is the process growing neurons, which grows the brain. And worry has a BFF called stress and fear. And when stress and fear meet up with worry, all of a sudden they have taken control of the steering wheel of the future, and they are driving that person because of worry. So what's interesting is hurry and worry meet ready and steady at a surfing camp. So I'm giving y'all the metaphor. And at this surfing camp, at the end of each lesson, hurry and worry would sit with ready and steady to begin to ask them a series of questions. And so I'm going to take you through those questions that hurry and worry were invited to answer as a result of the conversation with ready and steady. Just to give you a little of the backstory, when I wrote this book, I wrote it with the input from a clinical psychologist, Dr. Larry Kiefhofer, And these 3 questions in his clinical practice is what he used 40 years ago. So I asked him for the permission to use these questions. So in a moment, I'm going to have you form a group of 3, a trio or cohort, and I want to invite you to answer these questions. All right? So the first question is, what do you want for you? When you think about wherever you are right now on your journey, what do you want for you? Florence Shin, who wrote the book How to Play the Game of Life and Win, published in 1925, says what you want wants you. So what is it that you want? So here's what I want you to do. Real quick, just take about a minute or so to share with Oh Brilliant One, and you can look at it personally or professionally, doesn't matter. What is it that you want for you? All right? Go. Twenty seconds, 20 seconds. Okay, if you hear my voice, clap once. If you hear my voice, clap twice. All right. I want to build on this question, and I want to add the second question. The first question is the cognitive question. The second question is the emotional question, all right? And the question is, what are you feeling right now in this moment about what you just articulated as it relates to what you want? How do you feel about what you just shared? All right? I'll give you a minute or so and make sure each of you share. Go. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, if you hear my voice, clap once. All right. We're going to go to the third and final question. So remember, the first question is the cognitive question. Second question is the emotional question. This third and final question is the behavioral question. And the behavioral question is, what is that micro step that I'm going to take from beyond today to start moving in the direction I want to go? And the reason I'm asking for you to tee up what that micro step is because consistency, as John Maxwell, one of my mentors, would say, consistency compounds over time. So what's that step, micro step that I could take, one foot in front of the other, that will move me forward? So here's the question. What actions are you prepared to commit to of yourself or your team in order to unlock your brilliance? Remember brilliance, confidence, creativity, competence. So what's that one thing you can do, oh brilliant one? And I say, oh brilliant one, intentionally. What is that one step that you can take? Because here's the deal. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she's got a new book coming out, and the title of the book, wait for it, You Already Know. Isn't that a great title? And she goes through all these other things that have happened, and you already know. Here, let me just say this. Let me just digress for a second. Something that you have that I don't necessarily have is you have a sixth sense about something. You can sense things and know it far, even before it happens. And what I'm inviting all of you to do is to get a sniff of the future. Because when you begin to sniff the future, you begin to get a scent of what's happening. Rafiki in Lion King says the air is alive. How did he know? He sensed it. You already know. So when you take that micro step, it's strengthening your resilience to say, I am in control of how I show up despite how things may go down. So when you answer this question, you're saying, how do you intend to take control of the steering wheel of the future? All right? So 1 minute, go. Step you can take. Step you can take. Step you can take. Okay, 20 seconds. Okay, let's come back together. A few things. Whoever you shared with, as it relates to this micro step, you're now each other's accountability partner. And what I want to invite you to do, once a week for the next 6 weeks, 5 minutes, check in with Oh Brilliant One and say, hey, you remember when we were in that session at Coca-Cola and you said you were going to do this? How's it going? I've been doing this little exercise for about 20 years, and I will have people, if I go back to an organization, they'll say, Simon, you only asked for us to work together for 6 weeks. 10 years later, I still talk to my accountability partner. Because it's difficult to know yourself by yourself. So Oh Brilliant One is going to check in with you to see how you're doing. Next 6 weeks, 5 minutes. I'm going to share a video with you, and then I'm going to open up for Q&A. I was honored to do a session for the amazing folks at T-Mobile, and I was also interviewed, and I got to interview Callie Field, who is the president of T-Mobile Business. So I want you to listen to Callie just kind of share a little bit of her journey. And I think there might be something for you to pick up on as it relates to taking that next step.
People at T-Mobile know the story, but I thought I was going to be a civil rights attorney or a Supreme Court justice. You know, these were things that I was really passionate about. I couldn't find a job. I got hundreds of no's, and I just started selling cell phones in the mall, you know? And I was like, kind of like, this is going to be my career. And it seemed like a downtime. Best thing that ever happened to me. I started learning that I actually love working with customers. If you guys don't know that or can't tell, I love hearing people's stories. I love selling them great stuff. I love the whole interaction. I love it. And I also found that later on in my career as a leader, I had the opportunity to connect people to resources that they didn't have access to, or to give them tools and resources to develop their own path and change the course of their family's life for generations. And that's stuff that I wanted to do as an attorney or in a nonprofit world, that I actually get to do every single day in my job. And I love that because I didn't go, oh, hey, here's my purpose, or, you know, here's my 5-step plan to where I'm going to be in my career. I simply took what I had that day and tried to like find love and joy and excellence in that thing. And so I love that coaching. It's been very real for me.
If you hear or watch any videos of Callie on YouTube, just a phenomenal leader of how she went from selling phones in a mall to president of T-Mobile Business. A lawyer by training, absolutely brilliant. But I share that with you that no matter where you are right now, how do you do what's in front of you? To the best of your ability. Because in this, what I'm calling the Amplify Hope economy, is thinking about how do I add value wherever I show up every day in every way, okay? All right, so questions, comments, thoughts, feedback. If you have a question, this is the time. Heidi, do we have mics in the audience? Can we get a mic? All right, so we've got microphones right here. If you have a question, comment, feedback, please raise your hand so that we can answer any questions you might have. Don't all speak at once. Don't shout me down. All right, we've got a mic. Can we get a mic over? It's coming to us. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
Hello. What was your shape? Did you share that? Did I miss that?
My shape is I go between a rectangle and an octagon.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Kayla. All right, we got one right here. Got a mic coming to you. Tell us your name.
Yeah, hi. Oh, that's loud. Marina.
Hi,
And
Marina.
for me, it was really interesting. I was a circle when I took the survey, and I've been a hard diamond my whole life. And I think at my age, I have 2 daughters who are graduating high school. It really was like raising children and that growth that is making me more of a circle. Like I was a proud diamond, but now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna embrace being a circle.
Oh, there you
I didn't
go.
even know.
Absolutely.
That's great.
It's something that parents do. Because you can take the assessment free, you can have your children take the assessment as well to kind of figure out where they are in their journey. One of the stories that Kim was sharing with me is a husband and wife were having challenges in their marriage. And it was because if there was a dish left in the sink, the husband was okay, but for that particular shape in the wife, it irked the fire out of her. And so they realized a lot of conflict is he saw it one way, she saw it another way. So he needed some coping skills to understand, oh my goodness, here's how it sets her off. How do we just kind of understand this a little bit better? Okay, who else? Who else? Any other hands? All right, over here.
Hi, my name is Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
I'm super interested in helping uncover people that I work with, whether it's on a team or cross-functionally, what their true shape is versus how they're just showing up in their fear of failure or loss. Do you have recommendations on how to do that?
Yes. So one of the things that you can do is just reach out to me, and I'll have Kim or any of our coaches take your team through kind of understanding how their shapes show up at work, but really understanding what's that fear that might be driving them. And that's the change that I saw, because I've done Myers-Briggs, I've done Strength Finders, I've done DISC, and I love those assessments. But where I really think the secret sauce is when we understand a person's fear, what's driving them, how do we honor them in their shape, in how they're wired, so they can become even more. So just reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll be around, okay? And I'll connect you with Kim. Oh, let's get a mic to you right here so everybody can hear you. And then we'll pass, there it is. Miss Leanna?
Yes. How has your knowledge about shapes impacted your style of parenting with your children? You mentioned you have a son and a daughter, so how has that impacted how you show up and handle them in different ways?
Great, great question. So I tend to be a helicopter dad. I don't know if it's divorced dad guilt or whatever, just I'm always hovering. Madison, or let me step back, her amazing mom, even though we didn't make it after 25 years of marriage, we've been really great at co-parenting. She said to me, you need to back off because they're going to shut down and not talk to you. And what I realize in my rectangle, octagon, sometimes mindset is I needed to give them agency. We have raised them the best way they know how, and I just need to ask and listen. So Madison calls me a few weeks ago, and her mother had already told me that she had started dating. And you know, dads are always the last to know. So she calls me and she says, hey dad, I want to have dinner. So typical dad, oh, let me book a reservation, we'll meet out for dinner. And she says, no, I want to come over to your house and just order something in. So she comes over and we're just kind of eating dinner, and she says, well, you know, I just started dating, and I dated this guy, but I broke up with him. And I said, why'd you break up with him? She said, because he didn't make me a priority. And I said, wow, okay. And she says, you know, it's the first time I'm telling you about somebody that I dated. And I'm like, oh, Madison, I'm so proud of you. And when I realized I didn't need to interject that I have my shotgun ready for him, I'm that dad. I needed her to share with me how she already had a solution to this problem, okay? So I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to watch a movie. I said, what do you want to watch? She said, 23. She said, I want to watch The Way We Were. I'm like, you weren't even born when this movie came out. So there we're sitting on the sofa, we're watching The Way We Were. I'm in between sleep. Dad, 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 wake up, wake up. And she's narrating the movie of Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand as it relates to her relationship. And what I realized, Leanna, I had to honor her in that moment as a dad who needed to turn in his helicopter dad syndrome. And then she says to me halfway through the movie, Dad, I've already seen this movie 5 times. It's the first time I've seen it with you. And then my 23-year-old daughter grabs my hand, snuggles up with me. The divorced dad guilt came. I didn't hug her enough. Oh, Lord. But we have this moment, and what I recognize, I just had to be there in that moment for her. And she says to me at 10 o'clock at night when she's getting ready to leave, she said, Dad, can we do this again? And I say, yes. I share that story because that was not possible 5 years ago. But understanding how I needed to kind of show up differently and learn my daughter and what's important to her and not try to control her, but to let her be her most brilliant self. Now she wants to talk. Now she wants to open up because shapes just help me understand how to dial it back and be there for her because she's going to marry a man like me. How I'm treating her, she's going to, when her and her brother and I, the 3 of us together, I make her brother open the door for her. So she knows how a guy is supposed to treat her. So when some slewfoot jokers show up, she will know that the standard is here. I'm just saying. That's a sidebar. Sunny with an eye.
Not the slew-footed Joker. Have to watch out for those. Yes, my name is Sunny Hickman. So powerful and right on time. I was sitting next to my friend girl here, and she was like, I got here a little bit late, but like I got exactly what I needed out of this moment. So purpose and time. My question, I'm an Octagon, and I am a new leader of a team that has had 11 leaders in the last 3 years. They've had probably 12 CEOs, so within the organization, in almost the same amount of time, but kind of specifically in my function, I lead brand marketing for the team. So they're coming in, so really around the idea of inspiring brilliance with a team that has seen like the revolving door of leaders coming in. It's almost, they're like, not even cautiously optimistic that I'm gonna last, right? And that I'm gonna be able to inspire them. What is some guidance around either creating rituals or sort of inspiring that brilliance with this team? I'm 3 weeks in, so I'm like new. Guide me.
Okay. Wow.
Please, wisdom.
Wow.
Oh, wise and great one.
Okay, Sunny, I'll give you just some real practical things right off the gate if you haven't already done this. I would set up a one-on-one, 15 minutes with each person to say, tell me your story. And in asking them to tell their story, you're finding out what their talk track is, how long they've been there, what they like, what they love, personally and professionally. And what I want you to be able to do is in this 15 minutes, and I'm going to pick on Katie for a moment. So let's say, Katie, you're meeting with me. Katie, I want you to find out what is the name of the dog, the cat, the niece, the nephew, the son, the daughter. Find out what's important to me outside of work, because we're going to talk about work. Why? When I sense that you are personally invested in me and you see me as a human being, not a human doing, those questions to say, she's different. But the other reason why you want to do this, the psychology is everybody's going to talk after work and they're going to be on the phones. So what did you say in your meeting when you met with Sunny? Oh my goodness, she asked about, wow, she asked me the same thing. So what you're doing is you're setting up trust from the get-go to say, I see you, Katie, you see me. I see you as an individual, as a person. That's the first thing. Second thing is, what would it be like to bring the team together and to say, I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know what I don't know. We are in this together, and I want to understand, how do we right the ship? How do we ensure that we do good work? And I need all of you to give me input. Now, understand, as a leader, I'm going to hear you, and we're going to make a decision, and we're going to go forward, but I just want to make sure you know that you have voice, all right? So what that does is, and this is an overused word, it level sets everyone to say, oh, wow, we get to tee up, here's kind of what we're thinking. But then here's the third thing, and this is the secret sauce, and I'm going to bill you later for this. No, I'm just messing. Here's the research, Sunny. 1 minute of recognition creates 100 minutes of initiative. When individuals have been through that much change, that's change on steroids, that's drinking water out of the fire hose, to be recognized for something that I do right, it's kind of like, whoa, Sunny told me thank you. You wrote a note, you sent a favorable text, you sent a video. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I so enjoyed what you did. That's a deposit into their emotional bank account where they have been running on an emotional deficit. So all of a sudden to hear that I did one thing right, what else can I do for Sunny? What else can we do? Because you recognize them. And now let me add a disclaimer to this. So Disney was about to invite me to find my happiness elsewhere. and so I had to go to Disney University to understand what it meant to be a leader, the 7th most recognized brand in the world. So I'm sitting in the session, you're like, you gotta recognize your people, you gotta look after them. And I'm like, wow, 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 all right. So I bring the team together, and I'm gonna recognize Candace Brady. Never forget it, it's just like yesterday. And in front of 20 people, I'm responsible for P&L, and I'll say, Candace, you had the most amazing quarter, and Candace turns flush red, runs out of the room, and I'm like, oh, what just happened? And I said to Beverly, my teammate at the time, I said, Beverly, go after her. And Beverly went after her, and she came back, and she said, Candace doesn't like public recognition. So I said, Beverly, what should we do? Because all women are right. And so she said, I know we're moving quick. Some of y'all will catch that. She said, why don't you write a handwritten note, mail it to her, personal stamp, and recognize her that way? I did it. Candace comes to my office a few days later. She says, that's how I want to be recognized. So when I say 1 minute of recognition creates 100 minutes of initiative, how do people want to be recognized as they work for you? But Sonny, here's the real important thing. Spread it out. Because if you do it too much, people are like, oh, Sonny went to a session. We're going to see how long this is going to last. She's trying to build up some brownie points here. So pick your spot. You already know. Okay? Mm-hmm. Who else? Who else? Got about 3 minutes left. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, your name?
Karen.
Hey, Karen.
So, talking a little bit about different generations and how to get along in the workplace, not just parenting. What would be your advice working and collaborating with teams when you have people who maybe are approaching work, maybe not necessarily in a assuming positive intent, but maybe with their guard up? How do you break through those barriers between different generations?
Oh, I love this question. So, with each generation, boomers want to be left alone, let me just do my job. Gen Xers, who are kind of like in that leadership role, the baton has been handed to them. They're like, just recognize me for my competence, I've got this. Millennials specifically want to be mentored in how they're doing because they see themselves as the next one up. Then you have your Gen Z. And your Gen Z, they want to know just, hey, like, am I okay? So one of the things is to understand, number one, how each generation is wired. What do they need? Number two, whenever you have projects or things that you're trying to solve, be intentional to ensure that there are different generations giving feedback to whatever you're working on so they feel that they have input and also, and this is probably the most important thing, it's not just the what, but it's the why. And when they begin to understand the why, they become the unofficial marketing department of whatever that initiative is because they understand how it directly impacts me and everyone that's connected. So making sure they have input. But then the third thing is asking for their feedback on what could we have done better, where did we miss it, how can we do this differently? And those types of questions, Socratic method of learning, you are extracting from them their brilliance, all because you were intentional about their voice. Okay? Huh? Say it again?
If your name is Karen, what do you do?
If your name is Karen, what do you do? All right. That's a side joke. And then also, 12 shapes. Take them through 12 shapes. I think that'll be interesting for them just to understand. Okay? All right. Who else? Hi.
Hi, Simon.
Your name?
Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
I am putting myself out there. I usually don't do things like this.
Well, hold on. Before you say anything else, can we just give it up for Natalie? Yes?
Thank you. So for people in transition like me, what are some things that we can do to set ourselves apart from everyone else in the saturated job market? That's my question.
Number one is make a list of all the relationships that you have developed over however long you've been working. Specifically, you might even go back to 10, 15 years, whatever that is, a list, all right? That's number one. When you make that list, reach out to individuals who know you. So these are individuals who've moved to different parts of their career, and you have some relationship equity in however you know them. Reaching out, hey, how are you? How's it going? How can I serve you? Before, we don't want to show up with hat in hand. How can I serve you? And here's what I'm doing. Let's connect. So the first thing, a list. Secondly, what is your portfolio of some of your best projects that you've worked on throughout your career? How did it add value? How did it make a difference? What was your learning? How you separate yourself in this market is showing how you are an original voice instead of an annoying echo. So that original voice portfolio of, I just didn't do this, but here's what I learned, and here's how it added value, either saved money or made money, or made a difference. However it was measured, call it out, because you were a part of that impact. The third thing to consider is, out of all the roles that you've had for however you've been working, what was the favorite role that you had? Who did you work for? Who did you work with? What was it that lit you up? Because you already have muscle memory and that thing that made you come alive. And then what I invite you to consider, what is the ideal role that in this next thing I want to do? And it's got to have check, 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 all of these things. So what you want to do, I don't want you to look for a job. I want you to find an opportunity. Because the opportunity leverages your brilliance and what allows you to shine and thrive. A job stands for just overboard. An opportunity is about when I am doing my best work, how is my voice activated? Because when I find my voice, I find my joy. When I find my joy, I find my spark. And when I find my spark, I find my freedom. So the freedom is connected to when I was in my voice, in the zone, there was total alignment of head, heart, and hands so that the feet follow. Okay? Who else? Who else? Okay. Yes, so when you find when you activate your voice, you find your joy. When you find your joy, you find your spark. When you find your spark, you find your freedom. Okay? All right, I must end. So last September, I was in Colorado Springs speaking at an event for the Life Sciences Instructors Network. And these are individuals who work in learning and development at life science companies. And I issued a challenge that I did a moment ago, that you find an accountability partner, connect 5 minutes a week for the next 6 weeks, and just check in on each other. This is Melissa and Tracy. Melissa and Tracy they work at different companies in life sciences, but they met at the event, rekindled their friendship, and they decided to be accountability partners. I said, and if you do it, send me a LinkedIn message and tell me what you did. Melissa and Tracy decided that they would start checking in with each other 5 minutes a week. And what they discovered, things that Tracy was challenged in with the glasses, Melissa had already been there, and Melissa could give her input on, here's what you avoid, here's what you do. But Tracy also began to share with Melissa, hey, here's kind of what I'm doing. And here was their connectivity. They both were a department of one doing work that 2 to 3 other people or 4 people did at one time, but everything was on them. And they became supportive of each other, so much so that Melissa's vice president said, hey, what if you take that idea that you're doing with Tracy and we take it all over the company, marketing, operations, where we encourage people to have an accountability partner where they begin to share and do what they do. I sent them a message last week because I knew that I was going to be with you this week, just checking in, how's it going? And they shared with me that what they've been doing since last September has worked so well. An article has been written about them in their professional journal, and they are up for a nomination of an award to talk about the power of collaboration when we begin to connect with others. I share that with you next up, Atlanta, because I really want you to take away that how do I stay connected with Oh Brilliant One that I'm sitting next to? And how do I check in for who we both become in the process? I don't know when I'm going to see you again, but I want you to know you're built for this moment. You've got this. Resilience is your superpower. Now, I'm going to be over in the area signing books, hanging out. Y'all want to ask me a question, I'm here for you. But I love you and I believe in you. And there's not a darn thing you can do about it. Thank you so much.
Everybody, please, let's thank Simon.